Next, we got some other really sad news to talk about regarding Digdat. UK rapper Digdat has been found guilty of attempted murder over a shooting that happened, I think, a couple of years ago, a year ago. That was all over the news here in the UK. If you're not familiar with Digdat, he was essentially meant to be Central C before Central C, but he basically fumbled his chances, was in and out of prison for a bit, and now he's got a really crazy charge on him that he's most likely is facing 20, maybe even more years in prison, most likely given the severity of the charge and his long rap sheet. So this is courtesy of the BBC. It says as follows: rapper Nathan Tokowski, also known as Digdat, has been found guilty of attempted murder over a drive-by in West London. Tokowski, 25, from Deptford in southeast London, was in a stolen Audi car from which at least 6 shots were fired at a man in another car in Notting Hill on November 20, 2023. So it feels like it happened just recently. Wow, this trial's gone by really quickly. Shots hit Daniel Ofi Nuttall, 27, in the head, mouth and body, and he was lucky not to die, prosecution barrister Kate Beck said. That guy that he shot was Striker from CMG, who is one of the people in a gang that allegedly was responsible for Digdat's chain getting robbed. That's the narrative people are running with online. That Digdat got robbed one time for all of his chains while he was out with some girl, and he never got over that violation. So he basically, waged a one-man war against that whole entire crew for that chain get snatched. Even though maybe Striker wasn't involved. I don't know. Maybe Striker's part of CMG, but maybe he wasn't involved in the actual theft of the chain. You never know. But regardless, Digdat wanted to get his lick back, so he decided to ride out and get his lick back, and hit up seats. This Striker guy, he shot him allegedly 7 times or 6 times, a couple of times in the head, and the guy didn't die. Not too sure if it's because of the bullet caliber or maybe the guy kind of tilted his head or something, but I can't imagine getting shot 6 times, twice in the head, and not dying. That is fucking wild. The shooting was captured on CCTV, and the person who fired the shots had fired directly into the head of Striker, the court heard. Digdat, who single Air Force One, peaked at number 20 in the UK single chart, showed no reaction as the verdicts were returned. Sobbing could be heard from the public gallery as the jury unanimously found him guilty. So no reaction from Digdat, didn't even flinch. Most likely, because he already knew Wagwan for the case, he knew it was going to go badly for him. And most likely the sobs were probably from his family, who were the only ones probably there. That's usually the saddest thing about these drill rappers, right? A lot of these drill rappers, especially if they're on business, they're going to have a bunch of people around them because of their name and notoriety and their fame and their money. But then when they kind of live up to their raps and they go to court, the only people who are really there are their family and friends. And sometimes not even friends, mostly just family. Those are the only people who are actually there. That's a really crazy situation about the whole thing, because I'm sure there was a time where Digdat couldn't, there was a long line of people going around the block waiting to kind of be his friend or be in his crew. And now at this moment, the only people who are there are probably his family, parents, whatever, nieces, uncles, grandparents and shit. Pretty wild. Ammunition in cling film. Firearms officers found Striker severely injured in his flat near the scene in Clydesdale Road. After being taken to hospital, bullet fragments were removed from his skull, but Striker had declined to make any witness statement and did not participate in the trial, which you have to give him props for, because, nowadays everybody's fucking snitching. Not that it matters to me because I'm not involved in crime, but I've always thought it was lame to be involved in that kind of lifestyle, to actively take that oath, or to actively take, to take the oath, to actively run that kind of risk of going to prison, knowing exactly what you're doing, knowing what comes with it, death, prison, or whatever else it may be, and you then flip because you then get cold, you get cold feet, or you suddenly have a come to Jesus moment. I think that's not fair. You can't reap the rewards of being a criminal, or being in a gang, enjoying all the positives that come with it, in whatever lifestyle that may be, or in whatever way it comes. But then as soon as it gets ruined, it gets sticky, suddenly you start pointing fingers. I think that's a bit lame. So it has to be said that it's commendable for Striker not to offer any information, not to snitch, not to say anything, because for sure he saw who did it, If the guy shot him 6 times from a passing car, he definitely saw what they looked like. He definitely can provide some information that would put the right person in prison, or whoever else it may be. And the fact that he didn't deserves a lot of credit, especially considering they shot him fucking 6 times and he was in a medically induced coma and nearly died. The car used in the shooting was discovered by police more than a mile away, as well as a bag containing a firearm, 3 rounds of ammunition wrapped in cling film. The prosecution case was that Digdat made trips in a BMW car from the father's address in Deptford, of the area of the shooting on the 18th and 19th. So dumb. The DNA found on the headrest of the seat near the Audi could have come from him. I just don't understand the lack of preparation. A lot of these guys, especially Digdat, he's been in prison, I guess, since he was 14 or something, in and out, right? 13, 14. It's really interesting how some of these criminals who are what I would say to be career criminals turn out to be pretty terrible at crime. Like, how are you going to do a shooting and then have your phone with you prior, or have your phone with you during? How are you going to do a shooting and not burn the car and have the ammunition there available, or, you know, still on the scene, the bullets wrapped in cling film? Now, all these really, you know, dumb things. I don't know, taking the fucking parents' car in the first place. All these really stupid things could have been avoided, that maybe would have increased the chances of him getting away with it, which is probably too unlikely given the prevalence of fucking CCTV everywhere in London. But I always find that sort of thing interesting. Like, you want to get your leg back, but there's no attention to detail. Maybe that's the whole point. Maybe he didn't want to get away with this. Maybe he wanted to leave a mark. He never got over the violation of getting his chain robbed, and he set out with the sole intent of crashing out completely. Who knows? But it's just a wild situation where he kind of got caught because he left a very, very extensive paper trail, you know, and it was easy for the police to kind of piece together what happened even without Stryker taking a stand. So this is the mugshot, unfortunately, of Digdat, looking very fucking sinister there, looking not the happiest, which is understandable considering he was one of the premier UK rappers and was, you know, destined to make millions. And now he's not going to be able to realize that potential, because it's most likely, especially given his previous rap sheet and how serious we take gun crime here in the UK, and the fact that guns are not even legal here, most likely he's probably looking at 30 plus years, you know? 30 plus years at his age means that he'll probably come out when, what, he's 60 years old or something? By that time, his career is already done by then. So his career probably is over in a couple of months, you know? Unfortunately, that's how quickly the scene industry moves on. Somebody else will come along to kind of take his place, and everyone will kind of keep it stepping. That's the really unfortunate thing about the situation. It continues. DNA also found that the Audi was linked to an artist, Kamal Benjamin, known as Wesson. However, Mr. Benjamin had left the UK in November 2023 and was apparently living in Dubai at the time of the shooting. Mr. Benjamin's Instagram account showed a video post of a performer, Little Dirk, who performed in Dubai in 2023. Another post that showed he was on a night out, 50 Cent, it performed in November 2023. I'm not going to lie. When I read that the first time, it felt like to me this friend maybe had run a bit of a game. There's a bit of a scam going on there. Maybe this is not legit footage, because you can obviously do that. You can just go online and geolocation and find people sharing Instagram videos of themselves at a particular concert. So maybe he did that, which was a smart thing to do. Maybe he just went, you know, saw Dubai listings and went on some of his Instagram stories and just jacked their fucking clip of them watching 50 Cent perform and uploaded that onto Instagram story to give himself an alibi. That could be that's potential. That's potentially could be true. Tukoski from Deptford, Southeast London, was also found guilty of possessing a firearm, a self-loading pistol with intent to endanger life, and possessing ammunition, a quantity of 9mm cartridges with intent to endanger life. He was also convicted of charges of possessing a corrosive weapon, ammunition without a firearm certificate. Detective Constable Hannah Forrest for the Metropolitan Police said the attack was savage. She added, Digdat is a highly dangerous individual who had at the time of the shooting only just been released from prison after serving time for a separate offence. She added, so yeah, Digdat's in prison. It's a wrap for him, unfortunately. The other really sad thing about this situation, according to a few people online, specifically Bouncer, one of his former managers, he didn't have enough money to hire his own lawyers. He had to basically have legal aid, which is basically, you know, state appointed free representation. He didn't have the money available to represent himself with a private lawyer or somebody that can kind of take the case, which is really wild considering that Bouncer said the price for that is usually like, is usually, how much is it? Like 150K. So the fact that he hasn't got picked up, the fact that he wasn't able to, you know, pay that is brutal. I'm not too sure what happened to all these jewelry he had previously. I know a lot of his chains got stolen, but surely he had some sort of assets he could sell to get that money back. Because I know that was a thing with hip hop artists before in the past. They would buy jewelry specifically for reasons like this, So you buy a lot of jewelry when you're coming up in the scene or coming up in the industry. One of the things you do as well, allegedly as a rapper, is that you buy a big gaudy chain every album you drop to kind of, recognize that moment in time. And I guess one of the other things as well was a way to kind of like hold your money, right? Because you didn't trust the bank, so you didn't want to have it in cash. So you have this big fancy piece of jewelry so that if you ever came into hard times, you could pawn it and get some money, cash straight in hand if you ever come into a sticky situation. So it looks like he didn't have anything to hand, or maybe he just didn't have any money at that time, maybe because he wasn't be able to release songs or perform. That's a really wild thing to see, that a rapper in this country, one of the premier ones, didn't have 150 grand to hand to pay for his own lawyer to fight this case. Because maybe, with some of the evidence being circumstantial, there's a possibility he probably could have got a lesser charge. You never fucking know. But we're never going to know now because he didn't have the money to afford it. And now he's going to be sitting in prison bemoaning his choices. Probably not bemoaning his choices. Maybe he's always going to crash out. But that's always an unfortunate part of it as well. The idea that you can be a roadman, you could come out, because maybe he's been too institutionalized, because I remember reading something that he went to prison when he was like 13, 14 for stabbing a kid for 5 years. So maybe going to prison at that sort of age, because if you're already stabbing kids when you're 14, 15, it'll lead me to believe that you don't come from the greatest house, the life at home is a bit mad. So if that's the case, life at home is a bit mad, then it's unlikely you are going to turn it around, even if you get given the lottery ticket of being a successful rapper. Because some of these road guys do really well in that they get given a second chance to be, a public figure, to be a content creator, to be a rapper, to be a manager, to be a producer, whatever it may be in the industry. And they quickly realize this is an option to get away from that street life, and they take it. But it looks like Digdat didn't want to take it. And now he's ended up in this situation and essentially kind of, kapupped his career. So it's really sad in general, but you can't really be too sad because, he's a grown up and he decided to do what he decided to do. And, yeah, man, if that narrative is true about that girl being involved with the fucking robbery, woo, I wonder how bad she feels. Or does she feel bad? I don't know. Because there's a narrative that runs out there that this particular one girl, this influencer, I forgot her name, she was riding around in top 5 at one time. She was responsible for getting this guy set up in the first place to get his chain snatched. And now people are hypothesizing that's why she's never come back to the UK, because I think she lives in Dubai and is also in Toronto and stuff, but she's been known to be that kind of person. So, free Digdat. Not going to happen anytime soon because most likely he's going to get a deep sentence, but free him same way. It's sad to see. It's really, really sad to see.